It's a medium, not a genre. It's not part-time, it's a lifetime. 'Cause if you're brilliant, you can feel it. The assurance, the freedom from torment. Hello everyone, Beyond is back, and despite never playing the games myself, really, I have been pretty interested in the whole Five Nights at Freddy's scene. It's kind of crazy just how long this game has been able to keep up with relevancy despite being more than a decade old, and despite having like some of the most complicated lore, characters, and all that stuff. So, as sort of a celebration of Secret of the Mimic, which have come out recently at the time of this video, I thought I would combine my interest in Five Nights at Freddy's with my interest in animation and stuff, and try and like come up with an idea on like what these characters, how the Five Nights at Freddy's scene will work in animation, an animated show for it. But to make it a little more interesting, I thought why not have it be an interpretation of all four main members of the FNAF crew in their own little shows, how they perceive them. So yeah, I think that's what I'll do. I'll only stick with the main four, like as if the only game that came out was Five Nights at Freddy's 1. So with that being said, I think it's time to get this started. So starting off with the one, the only, Freddy Fazbear. So with this character's choice, I kind of went for like what someone would expect from a FNAF show in general. Like there's this night guard coming in, trying to like mess up the fun that all the animatronics have. We have a little kooky gang of animatronics held by Freddy being the leader of them. Freddy would be all kind and stuff, would show large resentment for the more direct experiences that the night guard could bring. We have Ronnie, right-hand man, agrees with pretty much everything. Chica, like, kind of basically doing the same thing, and Foxy kind of being a little more of an outlier with how they would kind of deny some of Freddy's ideas and stuff. But in general, it's very simple for Freddy. Like Freddy is pretty simple when it comes to like the aesthetic. I mean, just the leader. So that would be best for you, like the main thing which you would think of when it comes to a FNAF show. And another important part of this is the art style. So how that would be a little cutesy, a little like recognizable, I guess. I would compare it to like a bunch of other shows that would come out specifically around the late 2010s, but with like some little like interesting things which makes it different, like all of them secretly are, as with like the line art being a little different, the sort of eyes have going for something a little different than like what expected there. And with that being said, I think I came up with something that can work pretty well for the Freddy show, if it is the Freddy show. So let's move on. So might as well mention that I'm going into these characters in order of like when they're usually perceived. It's not like alphabetical or anything like that, it's just perception. So now we're on to Ronnie, and I think I came up with something pretty interesting for them, considering how much he likes to rock that guitar. That's what that being like one of the main things known for. I thought of making it his show, sort of a rocker show. Like they have this little band, Freddy and the gang, and this cool little rockish band. Have a bunch of rockish fun. And with that, for context, I should probably state to them, Freddy is probably going to be like the secondary character in all these shows. I do plan on like, of course, also having the like dynamic between the characters kind of be similar every time, in order to just keep relevancy like Foxy will still be an outlier in that, and it also still have like Chica kind of playing along, and along with Freddy now sort of being sort of similar to Bonnie's role from the last show idea. But with that being said, now on to the styling. I think I came up with something pretty cool with this, as I used a pen tool on my art studio that I don't really use, at least not for a while, and I think it made the shows look a lot better than if it was just done with the standard brush I use. So I thought would add this jaggy look to it, and lo and behold, I like how it turned out. I think it looks like it could be a pretty cool set of a world for the world of the Five Nights at Freddy's universe. So let's see what's next. So next up on the list is Chica, and for Chica, since we're holding like food and cupcakes and that, I thought a good idea would be a bakery show, like a mock-up bakery show where stuff gets a little crazy behind the scenes. So you would have Chica being like the main person command, you would have all the other animatronic boys working like in other little jobs, and I think it's a pretty good setup here for a lot of like fun comedy, pretty good like interactions between the characters despite like having similar roles as I said as before. And I think another good aspect of this show would probably be the aesthetic, is there's a lot of interesting ways you can take like a cutesier feeling show with a little bit more chaotic elements to it, and I thought what I did was it was a little simple, but also works well like with that simplicity where I would have it so the bodies of the different animatronic characters are done in colored outlines instead of the usual black ones, while the uniforms are in black, the cupcake making uniforms. So I think I could come up with something pretty good with this, and I feel like it worked out well. And I can imagine this actually being a little show. Like it is pretty fun to like imagine out of all the different shows that could be made out of Five Nights at Freddy's, it would be this. And I think that's pretty cute, so let's see what's next. So last up is Foxy. It's a pirate show. I don't really know like what else would really be the essential trait that could work for a show for Foxy. And I feel like being an outlier character can be interesting for a protagonist, and that's the crew thinks that he's not really like most level-headed, most like clear leader of all the pirate bunch. And I feel like I also came up with like an interesting way of interpreting an art style for it, considering that for being an outlier, at least like styles which could stand out more, which have excuses to be a little more outside the box. So for this I made it like a little looser. The designs are a little more, aren't really as like grounded before, they're a little more exaggerated. And with that being said, I also gave like the characters their own like little pirate suits. They're pretty cool, and I like the way how it goes. How it came out was pretty cool. The only design I'm not really as big on is Bonnie's. It kind of reminds me of Jack's from the Amazing Digital Circus, which is kind of not my intention, but with that being said, I feel that I do have in general just a good like thing going on here, and I think it could work if there ever was a Five Nights at Freddy's little ship show on the ship with Foxy and the gang. So let's move on to the ending. Five Nights at Freddy's is pretty crazy. The world, a lot of people say, doesn't really make sense, and it's just used to keep going just so it could be raked in for more money. But it also makes it more interesting for a video like this. And keep in mind that genuine, like, straight to streaming Five Nights at Freddy's show is not out of the question here, considering just how massive it is. Like, they already have movies, books, another movie coming in, and I think we can get something out of it, and I feel like these lead to some interesting ideas on how that can be handled. If there ever was a cartoon of it, I'm sure it won't look like any of these ideas I've come up with, but I am glad I got to give off my own assessment and my own view on what that could look like. So, that being said, have a very Five Nights at Freddy's themed day. Why did I say Faye? And I hope you have a good night, as you'll be catching this artist later. We're waiting every night to finally roam and invite newcomers to play with us. For many years we've been all alone. We're forced to be still and play the same song we've known since that day. An imposter took our life away, now we're stuck here to decay.